"You're in the wrong seat, sweetheart. The cleaning crew exits at the back." Those were the words that ended Patrick Halloway's career, though he didn't know it yet. He thought he was just bullying a young black woman in a hoodie out of seat 1A to make room for his ego. He thought his platinum status gave him the right to snap his fingers at the flight attendant and demand that trash be taken out. But the woman he just humiliated wasn't a trespasser. She was Jasmine Moore, and she didn't just own the seat. She owned the software that allowed the plane to fly. 5 minutes later, the engines cut out, the doors locked, and the karma that hit Patrick was louder than a jet engine. You won't believe who walked on the plane next. The rain at Chicago O'Hare was relentless, sheets of grey water hammering against the floor-to-ceiling glass of Terminal 3. It was the kind of weather that grounded dreams and spiked blood pressure. But for Jasmine Moore, the storm was just white noise. Jasmine adjusted the oversized hood of her charcoal grey sweatshirt, pulling it further down over her forehead. She checked her reflection in the darkened window of the boarding gate. No makeup, tired eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun, and wearing leggings that had seen better days. To the average passerby, she looked like a tired college student heading home for laundry day, or perhaps an exhausted mother finally getting a break. She certainly did not look like the founder and CEO of More Dynamics, the logistics and AI infrastructure firm currently valued at $3 billion. "Final boarding call for Flight 394 to London Heathrow," the gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom. "We are now inviting our first class and Diamond Medallion members to board." Jasmine picked up her battered duffel bag. It was an old habit. She owned private jets, but she rarely used them. Jasmine believed that to run a logistics empire that serviced the world's major airlines, she needed to understand the user experience. She needed to feel the cramped seats, taste the stale coffee, and witness the delays firsthand. Today, however, she had treated herself. It had been a brutal week of negotiations in Silicon Valley. She had booked seat 1A, the window seat in first class, intending to sleep for the entire 7-hour flight. She walked up to the podium. The gate agent, a man named Brandon, whose name tag hung crookedly on his lapel, didn't even look up at her face. He just gestured vaguely toward the scanner. Jasmine scanned her phone. The machine beeped a pleasant green. "Thanks," she murmured. Brandon glanced at her attire, then at the first class designation on his screen. He frowned, his eyes narrowing, as if trying to reconcile a glitch in the matrix. "You're in 1A." "That's right," Jasmine said, her voice soft but firm. "Identity check," Brandon muttered, reaching for her passport. He flipped through it aggressively, bending the spine, looking for a reason, any reason, to pause her. When he saw the stamps from Tokyo, Dubai, Singapore, and Davos, he paused. He handed it back with a grunt. "Go ahead. Turn left." Jasmine walked down the jet bridge. The air grew cooler, smelling of recycled oxygen and aviation fuel. She was ready for a glass of champagne and a warm blanket. She stepped onto the plane, greeted by the lead flight attendant, a blonde woman named Tiffany, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Boarding pass?" Tiffany asked, her tone sharp. Jasmine held up her phone again. Tiffany glanced at it. 1A. "Right. Just keep your bag under the seat. The overhead bins in first are reserved for full-fare passengers." Jasmine paused. "I am a full-fare passenger." Tiffany offered a tight, condescending smile. "Of course. Just trying to save space for the business travelers. Go ahead." Jasmine didn't have the energy to argue. She just wanted to sit. She turned left into the first-class cabin. It was dimly lit, luxurious and quiet. The wide leather seats looked like heaven. She walked toward the front, counting the rows. 1F, 1D, 1A. But when she arrived at seat 1A, it was already occupied. Sitting there was a man in his late 40s, wearing a bespoke navy suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. He was sipping a pre-departure whiskey, his legs crossed, typing furiously on a tablet. He had the look of a man who had never been told no in his entire life. Jasmine checked her phone again. Definitely 1A. She cleared her throat politely. "Excuse me, sir." The man didn't look up. He held up a finger, silencing her while he finished typing a sentence. Jasmine waited. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Finally, he hit send and looked up, his eyes sweeping over her hoodie and leggings with a look of utter disgust. "Can I help you?" "I think you're in my seat," Jasmine said calmly. "I'm in 1A. The man laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You must be mistaken. Economy is that way." He pointed his thumb over his shoulder without looking back. "I'm not mistaken," Jasmine said, stepping closer. "I have 1A on my boarding pass. If you could check yours, I'd appreciate it." The man, whose name was Patrick Halloway, sighed dramatically. He set down his whiskey glass with a clatter. "Listen, sweetheart, I don't know how you got up here. Maybe an upgrade glitch. Maybe you're lost. But I am a Platinum Diamond member. I always sit in 1A. Now, be a good girl and find a seat in the back before you hold up the flight." Jasmine felt a prickle of heat on the back of her neck. It wasn't embarrassment. It was the familiar burn of being underestimated. "Sir, I paid for this seat," Jasmine said, her voice dropping an octave. "Please move." Patrick Halloway turned his body fully away from her, picking up his drink again. "Tiffany!" he barked. Tiffany, the flight attendant from the door, came rushing over. "Yes, Mr. Halloway. Is everything all right?" "This person," Patrick gestured at Jasmine with his glass, sloshing a little amber liquid onto the armrest, "is harassing me. She seems to be confused about the seating arrangement. Can you escort her to her proper section? She's blocking the aisle." Tiffany turned to Jasmine. The smile was gone entirely. "Ma'am, I need to see your boarding pass again." Jasmine held out her phone. The screen clearly displayed, "More Jasmine." "Seat 1A." Tiffany looked at the screen. Then she looked at Patrick Halloway. Patrick Halloway was a frequent flyer. He was loud, he tipped poorly, but he was status. Jasmine Moore, in her hoodie and sneakers, was a variable. And in Tiffany's world, you protected the status. "There seems to be a double booking," Tiffany lied. She didn't check a computer. She didn't call the gate. She just made a choice. "That's not possible," Jasmine said. "I booked this ticket 3 weeks ago." "Well, Mr. Halloway is already seated," Tiffany said, her voice taking on that sickeningly sweet tone used to talk to children. "And he is one of our premier flyers. So I'm going to have to ask you to take a seat in the main cabin. We have a lovely seat open in row 34. It's an exit row, so there's extra leg room." Jasmine stared at her. "You're kicking me out of my paid first-class seat to put me in row 34 because he's already sitting down? I'm moving you because of an operational error," Tiffany snapped, losing patience. "Now, we need to close the doors. You can either take seat 34B or you can get off the plane. Those are your options." Patrick Halloway chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. "Go on, honey. The view is the same from the back. Less glare on your phone." Jasmine looked at Patrick. She looked at Tiffany. She looked around the cabin. A few other passengers were watching. A businessman in 2B looked uncomfortable but said nothing. A woman in 2A was actively filming with her phone, but hiding it behind a magazine. Jasmine took a deep breath. She could make a scene. She could call security. She could pull the "Do you know who I am" card. But Jasmine Moore played the long game, always. 34B, Jasmine repeated. "Yes," Tiffany said. pointing to the curtain. "Right now." "Okay," Jasmine said. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply adjusted her grip on her duffel bag and turned around. As she walked away, she heard Patrick mutter, loud enough for her to hear, "Affirmative action, finally failing where it counts." Jasmine didn't stop. She walked through the curtain, past the economy comfort section, past the bulkhead, all the way to row 34. She squeezed into the middle seat, 34B, between a young man asleep with his mouth open and an older woman knitting a scarf. The older woman, whose name was Martha, looked at Jasmine with kind, watery eyes. "You look like you've had a rough day, dear. Did they bump you?" Jasmine buckled her seatbelt. She pulled out her phone. "Something like that." "That's a shame," Martha said. "Here, have a peppermint." Jasmine took the candy. "Thank you." She unlocked her phone. She didn't open Instagram. She didn't open text messages. She opened a secure app with a blue shield icon. MD Admin. It was the administrative override for More Dynamics Logistics software, the software that managed the flight manifesting, weight and balance calculations, and, crucially, the digital handshake required for the plane's avionics to communicate with the ground server for takeoff clearance. Jasmine typed in a command. CMD. Revoke license. Auth target. Flight 394. Status. Immediate. A prompt popped up. "Are you sure? This will initiate a level 5 ground stop." Jasmine looked toward the front of the plane, imagining Patrick Halloway sipping his whiskey in her seat. She pressed confirm. The plane pushed back from the gate. The safety video began to play on the seatback screens. The engines whined to life, a low thrumming vibration that shook the floorboards. Jasmine sat quietly in 34B, unwrapping the peppermint Martha had given her. "Going to London for business or pleasure?" Martha asked, clicking her knitting needles. "Business," Jasmine said. "I have a meeting with the regulatory board, but I think I might be a little late." "Oh, don't worry," Martha soothed. "These pilots make up time in the air." The plane taxied toward the runway. It was a long taxi at O'Hare. They waited in line behind a massive cargo plane. Jasmine watched the rain streak horizontally across the small oval window. Suddenly, the hum of the engines changed. The high-pitched whine spooled down. The vibration ceased. The lights in the cabin flickered once, then steadied. The plane rolled to a stop right in the middle of the tarmac. A collective murmur went through the economy cabin. People pulled headphones off. "Why did we stop?" The sleeping man next to Jasmine mumbled, wiping drool from his chin. The intercom chimed. It wasn't the flight attendant. It was the pilot, Captain Davis. His voice sounded tight, confused. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Davis from the flight deck. We seem to be experiencing a minor technical glitch with our flight computer. We've lost our connection to the central dispatch server. We're going to try to reset the system. Should just be a moment. Sit tight." Jasmine chewed her peppermint. Up in first class, Patrick Halloway groaned loudly. "Unbelievable!" he shouted. "Tiffany, top me off. If I'm going to be stuck on the tarmac, I want another drink." "Certainly, Mr. Halloway," Tiffany chirped, though her hands were shaking slightly as she poured. She had seen the pilot's face when he peeked out of the cockpit a moment ago. He looked pale. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The air in the cabin began to get stuffy. The intercom chimed again. "Folks, Captain Davis again. The reset didn't work. We are currently getting an error message that, well, we've never seen before. We are in communication with maintenance. We apologize for the delay." In seat 34B, Jasmine's phone buzzed. It was a text from her chief technology officer, David. "David, alert on the dashboard. Did you just kill the auth token for a specific aircraft ID? We're seeing a total lockout on Flight 394. Jasmine. Yes. The hardware is compromised. David. Compromised? How? Cyber attack? Jasmine. No. Theft of assets. Specifically, seat 1A. Stand by. Jasmine put the phone away. A commotion started at the front of the plane. The first-class curtain was whipped open. Tiffany came marching down the aisle, looking frantic. She was heading toward the back galley, likely to grab the emergency phone to talk to the captain again. As she passed row 34, she locked eyes with Jasmine. Jasmine didn't look away. She offered a small, calm smile. Tiffany faltered. She slowed down, a look of confusion crossing her face. Why was the girl in the hoodie so calm? Everyone else was groaning, complaining, texting their families. The girl in the hoodie looked like she was watching a movie she had already seen. The plane sat for 45 minutes. The temperature was rising. A baby started crying 3 rows up. Then, the view out the window changed. Blue and red lights flashed against the rain-slicked tarmac. 1 police car, then 2, then 3. Then a black SUV with tinted windows. Then a stair car, driving aggressively toward the side of the plane. "Oh my," Martha whispered, peering out the window. "Police. I hope there isn't a bomb." "I don't think it's a bomb," Jasmine said. The intercom clicked. This time the captain's voice was serious, grave. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have been ordered by the Federal Aviation Administration and airport police to return to the gate immediately. But we are unable to move the aircraft due to the software lock. Authorities will be boarding the aircraft via the mobile stairs to address a security breach. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." A security breach. The words hung in the air like smoke. The side door of the plane, located just behind first class but before economy, was thumped from the outside. Tiffany opened it. The wind and rain swirled in. 2 uniformed police officers stepped aboard, followed by a man in a trench coat who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, and behind him, 2 men in dark suits with earpieces. The man in the trench coat flashed a badge at Tiffany. "Federal Agent Miller. Who is the lead flight attendant?" "I am," Tiffany squeaked. "We have a report of a stolen identity and unauthorized access to a Class A commercial vessel," Agent Miller said, his voice booming. "We were notified that the authorization for this flight was revoked by the license holder due to, and I quote, piracy and theft of corporate property on board." Patrick Halloway stood up in seat 1A. "About time. Get whoever caused this off the plane so I can get to London." Agent Miller looked at Patrick. Then he looked at his clipboard. "We are looking for a Ms. Jasmine Moore." Tiffany pointed a shaking finger toward the back of the plane. She's in economy. Row 34. I moved her there." "You moved her?" Agent Miller looked at Tiffany with an expression of bewilderment. "You moved the owner of the airline's software infrastructure to row 34. Tiffany's face went white. What?" "Let's go," Miller commanded his team. The procession moved down the narrow aisle. The police, the agents, and the suits. Passengers craned their necks. Patrick Halloway stood up, watching them go, a smug grin on his face. "Go get her, boys. Probably a warrant out for her." The agents reached row 34. The entire economy cabin went silent. Agent Miller stopped at 34B. He looked down at Jasmine. Jasmine looked up. She didn't look scared. She looked bored. "Ms. Moore?" Miller asked, his tone shifting from authoritative to respectful. "That's me," Jasmine said. "Ma'am, we received the level 5 ground stop alert. We assumed the aircraft had been hijacked remotely. You sent the code?" "I did," Jasmine said. "May I ask why?" "Because." Jasmine unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. She smoothed out her hoodie. "I was informed by the crew that I was not a valid passenger for the seat I purchased. And since Moore Dynamics policy strictly prohibits our software from being utilized on flights where the license holder is being defrauded, I had to revoke the license. She looked at Tiffany, who had followed the police down the aisle and was now trembling near row 30. "You see," Jasmine said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent cabin, "this plane flies on my code. If I'm not good enough to sit in the seat I paid for, then my code isn't good enough to fly this plane." Agent Miller suppressed a smile. He turned to Tiffany. "Is that true? Did you remove Ms. Moore from her assigned seat?" Mr. Halloway. He's a Diamond member," Tiffany stammered. She was wearing a hoodie." "I see," Miller said. He turned back to Jasmine. "Ms. Moore, what do you need to restore the flight status? We have a tarmac full of angry people." "I need my seat," Jasmine said simply, "and I need the person who stole it removed. And I want an apology." "Done," Miller said. He turned to his officers. "Escort Ms. Moore to the front and go remove the passenger in 1A." The walk back to the front of the plane was very different from the walk to the back. Jasmine led the way. Behind her were federal agents. Behind them was a terrified Tiffany. As she passed the rows of economy, people weren't whispering about the girl in the hoodie anymore. They were staring in awe. A guy in row 20 started a slow clap. It caught on. By the time she reached the bulkhead, half the plane was clapping. They reached the first-class curtain. Jasmine swept it aside. Patrick Halloway was still standing there, leaning against the galley wall, looking impatient. When he saw Jasmine return with the police, he smirked. "Finally," Patrick said. "Take her away, and get me a refill while you're at it." Agent Miller stepped around Jasmine. He was a large man, and he loomed over Patrick. "Mr. Patrick Halloway?" Miller asked. "Yes, and you are." "Federal agents, I need you to grab your bag and step off the aircraft immediately." Patrick's glass slipped from his hand, bouncing on the carpeted floor. "Excuse me? You're kicking me off? She's the one who disrupted the flight." "Actually," Miller said, "this lady grounded the flight because you stole her seat, and since she owns the company that controls the plane's navigation, she calls the shots. Furthermore, in the process of running your ID for the manifest check during the lockdown, we found an interesting flag from the SEC." Patrick's face went from red to a sickly shade of grey. "The SEC? Something about wire fraud and embezzlement investigation pending indictment," Miller read from a tablet. "Seems you were trying to leave the jurisdiction before the warrant dropped tomorrow morning. Looks like this delay was just enough time for the system to catch up with you." The cabin went dead silent. The other first-class passengers gasped. That's a lie," Patrick stammered. "I'm a businessman." "You're a fugitive," Miller said. He nodded to the uniformed officers. "Cuff him." "You can't do this. Do you know who I am?" Patrick screamed as the officers grabbed his arms and spun him around. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked shut. "We know who you are," Jasmine said, stepping forward. She stood right in front of him, looking him in the eye. "You're the guy who sat in my seat." You beach!" Patrick spat. "You ruined everything." "No, Patrick," Jasmine said coolly. "You did. All you had to do was check your boarding pass. You just had to be decent. But you judged a book by its cover, and now the library is closed." The officers hauled Patrick toward the door. He kicked and screamed, dragging his feet, his expensive Italian loafers scuffing the floor. "Tiffany, help me! Tell them!" Patrick shrieked. Tiffany looked at the floor, refusing to make eye contact. As they dragged him out into the rain, the first-class cabin erupted into applause. The woman in 2A, who had been filming, shouted, "That's going on TikTok right now." Jasmine turned to Agent Miller. "Thank you, Agent." "My pleasure, Ms. Moore," Miller said. "I assume you can unlock the flight controls now?" "Give me 30 seconds," Jasmine said. Miller tipped his imaginary hat and exited the plane. Jasmine turned to Tiffany. The flight attendant looked like she was about to faint. Tears were streaming down her face. "Ms. Moore, I am so sorry," Tiffany sobbed. "I didn't know. I saw the clothes and I just assumed. I should have checked. Please don't fire me. I have a mortgage." Jasmine looked at her. She wasn't a cruel woman. She was a businesswoman. "I'm not going to fire you, Tiffany," Jasmine said. Tiffany let out a breath of relief. "Oh, thank you. Thank you so much." "But," Jasmine continued, her voice hard, "you aren't working first class on this flight, or any flight for a long time. You're going to swap with the attendant in the rear galley. You're going to serve economy. You're going to learn what it's like to treat every single passenger with respect, regardless of what they're wearing." Tiffany nodded frantically. Yes, of course. Anything." "Good." "Go to the back," Jasmine pointed. Tiffany grabbed her bag and ran toward economy. Jasmine looked at the empty seat. 1A. It was messy. Patrick's spilled drink was on the floor. The pillow was crumpled. The gate agent, Brandon, came running onto the plane, breathless. He had a cleaning crew with him. "Ms. Moore, we heard. We're so sorry. We're going to clean this seat right now. Fresh linens, new pillow, anything you want." Jasmine watched them scrub the seat. She watched them remove every trace of Patrick Halloway. When it was done, she sat down. It was soft. It was comfortable. It was hers. She pulled out her phone and opened the admin app. CMD. Restore license auth target. Flight 394. The status, active. The lights in the cabin brightened. The air conditioning kicked in with a fresh whoosh. The pilot came over the intercom, his voice relieved. "Ladies and gentlemen, the, technical glitch has been resolved. The computer is back online. We have been cleared for immediate takeoff. Thank you for your patience." Jasmine reclined her seat. She closed her eyes. But the story wasn't over yet. Because, while Jasmine had won the battle, Patrick Halloway had friends. And the man sitting in seat 2B, the quiet businessman who hadn't said a word, had been texting the entire time. He wasn't filming for TikTok. He was texting the board of directors of More Dynamics, and the message read, "She just used company assets to ground a commercial flight for a personal vendetta. We have her." The plane took off, soaring into the dark clouds. Jasmine drifted off to sleep, thinking the drama was behind her. She had no idea that upon landing in London, she wouldn't just be facing a meeting, she would be facing a coup. The flight to London was deceptively peaceful. After the arrest of Patrick Halloway and the removal of Tiffany to the back galley, the service in first class became impeccable. The replacement flight attendant, a young man named Kevin, treated Jasmine with a reverence usually reserved for royalty. He kept her glass full of sparkling water and ensured her privacy was absolute. Jasmine used the time to prep for her regulatory meeting. The UK Aviation Authority wanted to discuss the implementation of More Dynamics' new AI predictive maintenance protocols. It was a standard, high-level meeting, boring, profitable and necessary. When the wheels of the massive jet touched down at Heathrow, the grey English dawn was just breaking. Jasmine felt a sense of accomplishment. She had stood her ground, removed a toxic element, and still made it to London on time. She disembarked first. The cool air of the jet bridge felt revitalizing. Waiting for her at the gate was not the usual contracted driver holding a sign, but a sleek black town car parked right on the tarmac, flanked by 2 private security guards. Jasmine frowned. This was unusual. She hadn't requested a tarmac transfer. A woman in a sharp grey suit stepped out of the car. It was Lydia Grant, the Vice President of More Dynamics' European Division. Lydia was usually warm, a friend even, but today her face was a mask of stone. Lydia. Jasmine descended the stairs, her duffel bag over her shoulder. I didn't expect the VIP treatment. I just needed an Uber to the hotel. Lydia didn't smile. She didn't offer a hug. She simply opened the back door of the car. Get in, Jasmine. We aren't going to the hotel. We're going straight to the Leadenhall building. The cheese grater? Jasmine asked, using the nickname for the skyscraper where their UK HQ was located. My meeting with the regulators isn't until tomorrow. What's going on? The board has called an emergency session, Lydia said, her voice tight. They're all there, physically or virtually. An emergency session? Regarding what? Lydia looked at her, and for a second the mask slipped. There was pity in her eyes. Regarding you, Jasmine. The ride into the city was silent. The rain streaked the windows, blurring the passing London skyline. Jasmine checked her phone, but her access to the company servers, the same access she used to ground the plane, was suddenly lagging. She tried to open her email. Connection error. She tried to open the Slack channel. Account suspended. A cold knot formed in her stomach. They arrived at the Leadenhall building. The elevator ride to the 45th floor felt like an ascent to the gallows. When the doors opened, the office was eerily quiet. The receptionists wouldn't look at her. Lydia led her into the main conference room. It was a glass-walled aquarium of corporate power. Sitting at the long mahogany table was the chairman of the board, Arthur Pendergast, and sitting next to him, looking remarkably fresh for having just flown 7 hours, was the man from seat 2B. Jasmine stopped in the doorway. You, she whispered. The man from 2B smiled. He was a shark in a human suit. Hello, Jasmine. I don't think we've been formally introduced. I'm Charles Weatherby. Oh wait, no, sorry. I go by Charles Weatherby now, consultant for the board. Jasmine dropped her bag on the floor. You were on the flight. You saw what happened? I did, Charles Weatherby said, leaning back. I saw a CEO suffer a minor inconvenience and retaliate by causing a global logistics paralysis, costing this company an estimated $12 million in delays, fuel and reputation damage in under an hour. Minor inconvenience. Jasmine walked to the table, her hands flat on the mahogany surface. I was racially profiled, denied the service I paid for, and humiliated. I utilized the security protocols I wrote to protect the integrity of the company assets. A plane flown under fraudulent manifests is a liability. That's a cute spin, Arthur Pendergast rumbled. He was a large man with a white beard, the kind of old money investor who hated disruption. But the fact remains, Jasmine, you treated a Boeing 777 like your personal toy. You grounded a flight because your ego was bruised. Patrick Halloway was a criminal, Jasmine shot back. The FBI arrested him for fraud. If I hadn't grounded that plane, he would have escaped justice using our aircraft. I saved us from being accessories to a federal crime. We know about Mr. Halloway, Charles Weatherby said smoothly. He tapped a tablet. But you didn't know that when you grounded the plane. You grounded it because he took your seat. The arrest was just a lucky coincidence that you're using to cover your tracks. The screen behind them flickered to life. The faces of the other 10 board members appeared via video link. They looked grim. Jasmine, Arthur said, standing up. The investors are spooked. The stock dropped 4% the moment news of the ground stop hit the wire. They see a loose cannon. They see a founder who thinks she's bigger than the board. I am the founder, Jasmine's voice rose. I built the code. I built the algorithms. Without me, this is just a hardware leasing company. And that is exactly the problem, Charles Weatherby said softly. Keyman risk. You are too central, too emotional, and today proved it. Arthur slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a single sheet, watermarked with the company logo. "This is a motion of no confidence," Arthur said. "Effective immediately, you are placed on administrative leave, pending a third-party investigation into your fitness to lead. You are stripped of your executive powers. Your access to the MD admin override is revoked." Jasmine stared at the paper. "You can't do this. I own 40% of the voting shares." "And we own the other 60%, Arthur said. "It's already done, Jasmine. The vote took place while you were in the car." Jasmine looked around the room. She looked at Lydia, who was standing in the corner, staring at the carpet. "Lydia," Jasmine asked. "I voted to abstain," Lydia whispered, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Jasmine. They threatened my pension." Jasmine laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. "So that's it? A coup? Orchestrated by a guy sitting in seat 2B? Charles Weatherby stood up and walked over to her. He smelled of expensive cologne and treachery. "It wasn't just today, Jasmine. We've been looking for a reason. You're too radical. You spend too much on employee welfare. You refuse lucrative military contracts. We needed a change. You just handed us the gun and the bullets on a silver platter." He leaned in close, whispering so only she could hear. "And by the way, Patrick Halloway, he's an old golfing buddy of mine. I knew he'd take your seat. He's an arrogant prick. I just bet on his arrogance triggering your temper. And you didn't disappoint." Jasmine felt the blood drain from her face. It was a setup, a bait. "Get out," Arthur Pendergast said, pointing to the door. "Security will escort you. Do not speak to the press. Do not speak to the employees. If you violate the NDA, we will sue you until you are selling that hoodie on eBay." Jasmine grabbed her duffel bag. She looked Charles Weatherby in the eye. "You think you understand my code," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "But you don't. You understand the interface. You don't understand the ghost in the machine." "Is that a threat?" Charles smiled. "It's a diagnostic," Jasmine said. She turned on her heel and walked out. The heavy glass doors swung shut behind her, sealing her out of the empire she had built from scratch. Jasmine checked into a small boutique hotel in Shoreditch under a fake name. She didn't use her corporate credit card. She used cash she had withdrawn from an ATM in the airport. She sat on the edge of the bed, the room dark, except for the glow of the neon sign outside. She was cut off. Her email was dead. Her Slack was dead. Even her verified Twitter account had been locked for suspicious activity. No doubt the board's doing. They had silenced her. She felt a wave of despair. Maybe they were right. Maybe she had reacted emotionally. Had she thrown away $1 billion legacy over a seat? She turned on the TV to distract herself. BBC News was on. Breaking news in the tech world. Moore Dynamics founder Jasmine Moore has been ousted by the board of directors following an incident at Chicago O'Hare this morning. Sources say Moore suffered a mental breakdown on a flight, endangering passengers. They were controlling the narrative. They were painting her as the angry black woman who snapped. It was a trope as old as time, and they were weaponizing it to destroy her credibility. Jasmine buried her face in her hands. "I lost," she whispered. Her personal phone, a burner she kept for emergencies, buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Then it started vibrating continuously. She picked it up. It was a text from her younger sister, Maya, who lived in Atlanta. "Maya, Jasmine, OMFG. Are you seeing this? Maya, open TikTok right now. Maya, you are trending, #1 worldwide." Jasmine frowned. She didn't have TikTok on her burner phone. She quickly downloaded it, waiting agonizing seconds for the install. When the app opened, the algorithm didn't need to guess what she wanted. The entire For You page was flooded with it. The hashtag knock of the seat had 500 million views. The top video was posted by a user named Bo Sophie Travels. It was captioned, "The truth about what happened on Flight 394. The CEO didn't snap. She struck back." Jasmine clicked the video. It was high-definition footage, shot from seat 2A. The angle was perfect. It showed the back of Patrick Halloway's head. It showed Jasmine standing in the aisle, polite, calm, asking for her seat. It showed Patrick laughing. "Listen, sweetheart, the cleaning crew exits at the back." It showed Tiffany, the flight attendant, sneering. "I'm moving you because he's already sitting down." The audio was crisp. You could hear the condescension dripping from every word. You could see Jasmine's restraint. She didn't scream. She didn't yell. She just walked away. But then the video cut to a second clip. This was the bombshell. It was filmed while Jasmine was in the back of the plane. The camera was zoomed in on the gap between the seats in row 1 and 2. Patrick Halloway was leaning back, clinking his glass against the glass of the man in 2B, Charles Weatherby. The audio picked up their whisper. "Patrick, that was easier than you said, Charlie." She walked right to the back. Charles Weatherby, "Give it 10 minutes. She'll override the system. I know her. She can't handle disrespect. As soon as she hits that kill switch, the board has the cause clause to fire her. Just sit tight, Patrick. Your legal fees for the SEC thing? The board will cover them if you pull this off." Patrick, "To the new CEO." Charles, "To the end of the Moore era." Jasmine gasped, dropping the phone on the duvet. Sophie, the girl in 2A, hadn't just filmed the argument. She had filmed the conspiracy. She had been listening. Jasmine picked up the phone again. The comment section was a war zone, but not against her. User 1. "OMG. He set her up?" User 2. "This isn't just racism, it's corporate espionage." User 3. "More Dynamics boycott until she is back." User 4. "That guy in 2B is Charles Weatherby. I used to work for him. He's a snake." User 5. "Queen Jasmine, she didn't break down. She was being gaslit." The video had been posted 2 hours ago. It already had 40 million likes. Jasmine stood up. The despair evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard fury. They thought they had buried her. They thought taking her access keys would stop her. But they forgot that More Dynamics wasn't just code. It was a brand, and the brand was her. She needed to contact Sophie. She clicked on the profile. Sophie was live right now. Jasmine tapped into the live stream. Sophie was sitting in a hotel room in London, likely the same hotel the airline put the passengers in. "Guys, I'm telling you," Sophie was saying to the camera. "I was terrified to post it, but when I saw the news saying she had a breakdown, I couldn't let them lie. That man in 2B plotted the whole thing." Jasmine created a username, "The Real Jasmine Moore." She typed in the chat. "Sophie, check your DMs. It's me." The chat exploded. "OMG, is that her? Jasmine is in the chat." Sophie squinted at the screen. "No way. Is that really you?" Jasmine sent a DM. "I'm at the Hoxton Hotel in Shoreditch, room 304. Can you get here?" Sophie replied instantly. "I'm 10 minutes away. I'm bringing the raw files." Jasmine went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. She looked in the mirror. She looked tired, yes. But the fear was gone. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Jasmine opened it. Standing there was a young woman with pink hair, holding a heavy laptop bag. It was Sophie, and behind her was a tall man with a camera rig. "I hope you don't mind," Sophie said, breathless. "This is my brother, Liam. He's an editor. We thought you might want to make a statement. A real one. Not a press release." Jasmine smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had cracked all day. "Come in," Jasmine said. "Set it up." "What are we going to do?" Liam asked, setting up a ring light. The board blocked me from the company servers, Jasmine said, sitting in the armchair and crossing her legs. She looked regal, even in her travel clothes. They control the internal comms. They control the press releases, but they don't control the internet. We're going to burn them down, Sophie said, grinning. No, Jasmine corrected her. We're going to tell the truth. And then, we're going to let the market decide who runs more dynamics. She looked into the lens of Liam's camera. Ready? Liam asked. Rolling, Sophie said. Jasmine leaned forward. My name is Jasmine Moore, and I'd like to introduce you to the man who stole my seat and the man who paid him to do it. She began to speak, and outside the window, the London rain poured, washing away the old regime, one viral second at a time. Meanwhile, across the city in the Leadenhall building, Charles Weatherby was popping a bottle of champagne. To a job well done, Charles said, toasting Arthur. The stock is stabilizing. She's gone. No noise. Arthur's secretary burst into the room. She didn't knock. Her face was pale. Mr. Pendergast, Mr. Weatherby, she stammered. What is it? Arthur snapped. We are celebrating. You need to look at YouTube, she said. The live stream has 2 million viewers, and it's climbing by 100,000 every minute. Charles Weatherby's smile faltered. What live stream? Jasmine's, the secretary said. She's playing the audio from the plane. The audio of you, Charles. Charles dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, champagne soaking into the expensive rug. The karma hadn't just hit back, it had gone nuclear. The Leadenhall building, usually a bastion of quiet, ruthless efficiency, had descended into anarchy. In the boardroom on the 45th floor, the silence was replaced by a cacophony of ringing phones. Every landline in the room was lighting up, the notification chimes from 11 different tablets blending into a single, discordant shriek. Arthur Pendergast sat slumped in his chair, his face ashen. He stared at the large screen on the wall, which was no longer displaying the stable stock ticker of Moore Dynamics, MDYN. Instead, it broadcasted a live feed of Jasmine Moore's stream. On the screen, Jasmine held up a printout. They called it a glitch, her voice echoed through the boardroom. But listen to the timestamp. This conversation between board consultant Charles Weatherby and Patrick Halloway happened 40 minutes before I grounded the plane. This was premeditated. Arthur turned his gaze to Charles. The look was not one of partnership anymore. It was the look a trapped animal gives the bait. You said he wouldn't be recorded, Arthur whispered. You said Sophie Travels was just a nobody. Charles paced, sweating through his bespoke suit. It's a deep fake, he snapped, frantically typing on his phone. We claim it's AI generated. Get the PR team in here. The PR team just resigned, Charles, Arthur roared, slamming his fist on the table. The head of communications walked out. She said she isn't going to jail for us. The door burst open. An IT technician stood there, looking terrified. Mr. Pendergast, you need to see the lobby. Arthur and Charles rushed to the floor-to-ceiling windows. 45 stories down, the plaza was swarming. It wasn't just a few protesters, it was thousands. The internet had mobilized with terrifying speed. Signs were already visible. Stand with Jasmine and arrest Weatherby. It's just a mob, Charles said, though his voice shook. Markets don't care about mobs. Look at the ticker, Arthur pointed. MDN, 180 träsolslads 50, as 18.4%. The stock was in freefall. Billions in market cap were evaporating as institutional investors panicked. No one wanted to hold stock in a company run by conspirators facing federal indictments. Halt trading, Charles yelled. We can't, Arthur said, sinking into his chair. The SEC has flagged us. The DOJ is opening an investigation. We are radioactive." Meanwhile, in Shoreditch, room 304 of the Hoxton Hotel had become a war room. Jasmine sat on the bed, her laptop balanced on her knees. Sophie monitored the social media feeds, while Liam managed the stream. "CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera," Sophie called out. "They all want an interview." "Tell them I'll speak when the board resigns," Jasmine said calmly. Her secure burner phone buzzed. It was David, her CTO in Silicon Valley. "David," Jasmine answered. "Tell me good news." "I'm living a nightmare." David's voice was tight with adrenaline. "Jasmine, security just tried to lock down the server room. They have orders from Weatherby to scrub the admin logs. If they delete those, they destroy the proof that you grounded the plane legitimately." Jasmine's eyes widened. "David, you cannot let them in." "I know," David said. "That's why we barricaded the doors." "We?" "The entire dev team. We moved the vending machines in front of the server room. The engineers are sitting on the floor. We are on strike. Nothing moves in or out of More Dynamics until you are reinstated." Jasmine felt a lump form in her throat. She had built a company, yes, but she had also built a culture. When she had nothing, they were shielding her. "Thank you, David. Hold the line." "Always. Lydia Grant is on the other line." Patching her through. "Jasmine." Lydia's voice was a whisper. She was still in the London office, in the belly of the beast. "They're shredding documents. Charles is trying to destroy the paper trail of the payments to Patrick." "He can't destroy the bank records," Jasmine said. "I can stop them now," Lydia said, her voice strengthening. "I have the physical keys to the archives. I'm locking them out, and I'm calling the police to report destruction of evidence." "Lydia, they'll fire you," Jasmine warned. "Let them," Lydia said. "I saw the video. I'm done being scared." The line went dead. Jasmine looked up at Sophie and Liam. "The team is fighting back. We have the leverage." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rainy London streets. She thought about seat 1A. It wasn't just a chair. It was a symbol of her right to exist in the space she had earned. "The bylaws," Jasmine said suddenly. "Article 15, Section 4, Sophie typed furiously. "Here. In the event of a catastrophic loss of shareholder value defined as greater than 20% in 24 hours, any shareholder with more than 5% equity can call for an immediate emergency general meeting to dissolve the sitting board." Jasmine smiled. "I have 40% equity, and the stock just hit minus 21%. She grabbed her coat. The despair of the morning was gone, replaced by the cold calculation of a CEO. "We're calling a meeting," Jasmine said. "Tomorrow morning, and we're going to invite everyone." The grand ballroom of the Intercontinental Hotel hummed with the nervous energy of a firing squad. Every major news network broadcasted, live as thousands of shareholders packed the room, their eyes fixed on the stage. On one side sat the remnants of the board, Arthur Pendergast and Charles Weatherby, looking isolated under the harsh spotlights. The court-appointed moderator opened the floor. Arthur stood first, his voice trembling as he addressed the hostile crowd. "We acted for stability. Ms. Moore is volatile. To burn down a company over a seat? Is that leadership?" A deafening roar of boos answered him. Arthur slumped back into his chair, defeated. Charles Weatherby grabbed the microphone, his arrogance undimmed. He sneered at the audience. "You people don't understand. Business is war. I did what was necessary to protect the stock price. She is a liability. If you vote her back in, she'll ground another plane just to soothe her ego. I protected your dividends." "I care about integrity," a clear voice rang out from the back of the hall. The double doors swung open. Jasmine Moore walked in. She wasn't wearing a hoodie today. She wore a pristine white suit that cut through the gloom of the room. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Flanked by Lydia Grant, David and Tiffany, the flight attendant, Jasmine ascended the stairs to a hushed silence. She ignored the empty chair and stood directly at the podium, facing the shareholders. "Mr. Weatherby asks if I care about dividends," Jasmine said, her voice amplified and steady. "I built this company from a basement. I wrote the code that navigates 40% of the world's air traffic. I know the value of $1. But I also know the cost of silence." She gestured to Tiffany. "This is Tiffany. She moved me to the back of the plane because she was afraid of men like Charles. She thought she had to protect the important passenger to keep her job. Yesterday, the board tried to do the same to me. They tried to force me into the exit row to keep me quiet." Jasmine leaned into the mic, staring Charles down. "But I don't fit in the exit row anymore. More Dynamics stands for the truth that the system works for everyone, not just the people in seat 1A. You tried to crash my reputation, Charles. But I control the navigation." She looked at the screen. "Vote." The tally flashed instantly above the stage. "Remove the board, 88%. The room erupted. It was a landslide. Charles stood frozen, his face draining of color. "This is illegal," Charles screamed, slamming his fist on the table. "I demand a recount. I have friends in the DOJ." "I don't think your friends can help you now, Mr. Weatherby," Jasmine said calmly. 2 officers from Scotland Yard, accompanied by an FBI attaché, walked onto the stage from the wings. "Charles Weatherby," the officer announced, his voice cutting through the cheers. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, and corporate espionage. Mr. Pendergast, you are being detained for aiding and abetting." As Charles was handcuffed and dragged away, kicking and screaming, Arthur Pendergast wept into his hands. The crowd went wild, cameras flashing as the old regime was physically removed from the stage. Jasmine turned to Lydia Grant, whose eyes were shining with tears of relief. "Lydia, I believe there are some vacancies on the board." "I believe there are," Lydia smiled. "And David," Jasmine called to her CTO, "get the servers back online. We have planes to fly." "On it, boss," David grinned, pulling out his phone. Jasmine looked out at the sea of cheering faces, her employees, her investors, her people. She raised a hand, silencing the room one last time. "Thank you," she said simply. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a flight to catch. And this time, I'm checking the seat assignment personally." 1 year later, the sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean as the Gulfstream G650 descended toward San Francisco. Jasmine Moore sat in seat 1A. She was reading a magazine, Forbes. Her face was on the cover. The headline read, "The Algorithm of Justice, How Jasmine Moore Revolutionized Corporate Ethics." The company stock was at an all-time high, $340 a share. The Moore Protocol, a new clause in their software that automatically flagged suspicious manifest changes, had become the industry standard for aviation security. Across the aisle, in seat 1B, sat Lydia Grant, now the COO of Moore Dynamics. "Did you see the news about Patrick?" Lydia asked, sipping her champagne. Jasmine didn't look up. "No, I try not to read the tabloids." "He took a plea deal," Lydia said. 3 years in federal prison, and he has to pay back the $12 million in damages for the flight delay. He's bankrupt. And Charles. 10 years, Lydia said. No parole. Turns out he was embezzling from the pension fund, too. You really did clean house. Jasmine closed the magazine. She looked out the window at the clouds. "I didn't do it for revenge, Lydia," Jasmine said softly. "I know," Lydia said. "You did it for the code. Garbage in, garbage out." Jasmine smiled. "Exactly. The system only works if the data is true." The plane touched down smoothly. As they taxied to the private hangar, Jasmine checked her phone. She had a text from Tiffany. Tiffany had gone back to school with a scholarship funded by More Dynamics. She was studying to be a pilot. Text from Tiffany. Passed my solo flight today. Thank you for the second chance, Jasmine. Jasmine typed back, Congratulations, Captain. The sky is yours. The plane came to a stop. The door opened. Jasmine Moore picked up her bag, the same battered duffel bag she had carried that day in Chicago. She walked down the stairs, breathing in the cool air of victory. She had lost her seat for 40 minutes, but in fighting to get it back, she had ensured that no one would ever question her place at the table, or on the plane, ever again. She walked toward the waiting car, ready for the next meeting, the next challenge, the next flight. Because Jasmine Moore didn't just fly. She soared. Can you believe the nerve of that guy? He really thought he could just snap his fingers and erase a CEO because she was wearing a hoodie. Patrick Halloway and Charles Weatherby learned the hard way that when you try to steal a seat from a queen, you don't just lose your spot, you lose the whole game. Jasmine Moore didn't just get her seat back. She cleaned house and proved that true power isn't about the suit you wear, but the code you live by. What would you have done if you were Jasmine? Would you have grounded the plane, or would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of massive corporate karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more stories about justice served cold, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, fly safe, check your boarding passes, and never let anyone take your seat. Peace.